All right, welcome back to the broadcast. You're watching To The Point. Many thanks indeed for staying with us. And our conversation tonight is centered on bridging the digital divide. Just before we start this conversation, our guests are already in studio with us. We have just right next to me is Kennedy Kamande. Kennedy is an AI researcher, and right next to him is Michael Michi. I hope I'm not butchering your name, Michael. Michael is an innovator and the co-founder of NIA's Akili Zetu Foundation. You'll be telling us what you do over there as we continue, or maybe you could just start us off with that. What do you do at the NIA's Akili Zetu Foundation, Michael?
Thank you. NIA's Akili Zetu Foundation is a non-profit around artificial intelligence where we advocate for AI by Africa for Africa, and also we try to participate in preventing AI hegemony within Africa. Yes.
Amazing. So in studio tonight, I have AI professionals, an AI researcher, and somebody also working very closely on matters AI right there. So our conversation tonight, once again, is centered on bridging the digital divide. And what exactly is this? Now, it is the gap between individuals who have access to modern information and communication technology, that is ICT, and those who do not. Now, current state of the digital divide in Kenya is as this, according to Statista on the internet penetration rate in Kenya. And according to the Statista, Kenya's internet penetration rate is around 43%. In urban areas, we have a higher access compared to rural regions. Now, this is the basis of our conversation tonight, gentlemen. We have higher internet penetration in the urban areas, and we are talking about Nairobi, the cities, for instance. But how about the areas in the mashinani? Why do we have such a low internet access to these people? How do we bridge this divide? What is your take on this as we start? Kennedy.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here. My name is Kennedy Wangari, an AI researcher and also data scientist at UNEP. And it's an exciting topic as we discuss, as we look at what are the challenges. As much as we're leveraging the digital space, the opportunities it's brought for Africa, the opportunities it's brought us to make money, to be able to make and influence decisions, communication, and all those benefits, we still have statistics that indicate that about 43% of Kenyans can be able to access internet. And also going by the ITU report, that's the UN's International Telecommunication Union, indicates that about 39% of Africa population has access to the internet. So it's sort of roughly the same percentage. And then we ask ourselves, there are a lot of initiatives that have been made either at national level over the years to look at how can we bridge this gap so that we can have more people being able to tap into the opportunities that are there within the digital space. But you realize that there are challenges that have been hindering us. One good example is that as much as in the country we're trying to improve digital literacy and to ensure that we have education through Ajira Digital, through ensuring we have research hubs, as you put it across, that most of these opportunities can be accessed through within Nairobi. If you go to those rural areas, you'll not find these ICT hubs. You'll not find these community centers. You'll not find these areas where youths can be able to come and access these training opportunities. Yes, the government is doing a good job, but you find that there's still more that can be done. If you go further, you'll find that, yes, our nation, that we pride ourselves on last mile connectivity, because for us to be able to access internet, it means we need to have power. And you find that most of, quite surprising that most places, even right now within Kenya, do not have access to internet. So that means you cannot be able to power your electronic devices. More to that, you'll find that even the rate of, which is quite challenging, and it's making most of us as youths, even in those mashinani and even within the urban areas, not to access internet, is because it's quite expensive to access mobile broadband internet. You look at the cost of purchasing a mobile phone, it's quite high. You look at the cost of even buying the data bundles, it's quite high. So you realize that there's still challenges around how do you access this infrastructure? How do you access these mobile phones? How do you ensure also the government that we have this infrastructure from the hubs all getting to those marginalized areas. We would go in and on and list the various problems, and but we also making you find that the government and also at community level we are making initiatives. The youths, when an opportunity comes, they're there to learn, they're there to take up the opportunities. But we can do more, because look at an example of one of the nation's priding initiative that we have, ICT Software Factory in Mulot. If you go there, will you find will you find resources that the people who are there can use? Will you even find internet? Will you even find power?
On very, very important points, and we have them here. We will be looking quite deeper into them later on, but I just want to get also some views from Michael, of course. Are there any locally transcribed innovations that could help bridge this gap between the digital divide in urban centers and rural centers, from your own view?
I think it's an infrastructure challenge. I think the first step is, one, get power there. Once you have power, then your last mile for internet is also quite a challenge, because most of what's been set up is obviously set up by private companies. It's a heavy investment for them to run fiber across all these regions. So they could look at alternatives, maybe borrow a page from Elon Musk's Starlink, look at satellite as an option for internet connectivity within these areas. But primarily, I think the main challenge just sits on infrastructure. There has to be capacity to put up this infrastructure, which means a lot of financial resources. And if it's private sector, they may just look at it from a point of, if there's no return on investment for this, it may not be a project that can be sold and actually kick off. But if it's government driven and it's something which government feels that every individual, every citizen of the country deserves to have access to this resource, then as a government project, I think maybe has a bit more legs, or maybe through private and public partnerships that can be done.
All right. Now, when we're talking about AI, for instance, do you think our youth or those in rural areas are very much well versed with the AI? And does it in any way have the potential of bridging this gap?
So I don't think AI will help bridge this gap. It's sort of AI currently in its current state. As a country, as a continent, we are still heavily consumers of the technology, and it does ride heavily on the internet. All the large public models are accessible through the internet. So already we first do need the internet infrastructure, but there is a lot of work being done within the ecosystem in country, with companies trying to build local models that can run on devices, so that you don't need access to the internet. If you have power, then you can access this resource. Some are trying to take it as far into even mobile devices, not just laptops. So that kind of work could help terms of getting more democratization of AI outside the urban areas, which would be a good thing, though it's still early stages. Yeah.
Are we still in our early stages of AI in Kenya? Kennedy?
I believe we're still in the early stages. Because if you look at from the adoption, the implementation, and also how we are working on the other enabling factors that ensure that we can be able to adopt and implement AI in a safe and inclusive and basically in a way that it doesn't bring a lot of risks and ethical issues. We're still quite at an early stage. If you look at policy, frameworks, regulation aspect, there's more that's with early stages, developing frameworks, strategies. If you look at on matters research and development, you're finding universities such as the University of Nairobi, they're bringing up AI hubs. If in terms of investing in education, new degrees and master's programs are coming up. If you look up at data investment in data infrastructure and cloud services that basically support the AI adoption, we're basically making those gradual steps in the right direction, I would say so.
All right. Now, when we are talking about AI, artificial intelligence, are we only referring, because, you know, when we mention this, a couple of people may think we're only talking about ChatGPT. We do have a variety, right? Maybe you can give us a breakdown, Mike.
Yeah, so maybe I'd start off it's weird being in the AI space and not really believing in using AI.
You don't believe in using AI?
Not believing in using as in
Yeah.
the term AI. So
Okay.
it's a very broad. I think what most people are used to seeing is generative artificial intelligence, which is what is we can use examples of ChatGPT. We have Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, and those are just mostly text-based language. They're just large language models. We have others that do video generation. OpenAI is working on their model called Sora. We have Stability AI, who also have their own model. And those are to create images and videos. We've seen AI models that have been created for sound, so creating music. So there are quite a bunch of models out there. So I'd say ChatGPT actually was what got everyone into the craze of it, because it had such a one of the fastest apps in terms of growth, reaching 100 million users very fast. So that sort of when we think of artificial intelligence, we sort of tend to think in that direction. But there's quite a lot behind just artificial intelligence. We have conversations around deep learning, machine learning. We have a lot of math and statistics, calculus, algebra, a lot of work with data and software development. It's quite a huge field, even just looking at it from people who practice within AI governance, people who are trying to practice in AI ethics. It's a huge field that shouldn't just be looked at as one simple app, but I guess that's the kind of flagship app that now we measure AI by.
Right. Yeah. Perhaps we should have also more training on what AI really is. Do you agree?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the current state of the digital divide in terms of access to digital devices. Now, while smartphone ownership has been increasing, many young people, especially in rural areas, lack access to computers, tablets. We have also reliable internet connections. We don't have reliable internet connections in the rural areas. And this limits their ability to participate fully in the digital economy, education, and other online opportunities. This is according to GSMA report on mobile economy in sub-Saharan Africa. Something really needs to be done, because when we are saying there is a lack of accessibility to smartphones, tablets, or computers in the rural areas, then maybe this is the reason as to why there is quite a very broader digital divide in the rural areas as compared to, in the urban areas as compared to the rural areas. So what do you think really needs to be done? Maybe innovations to save this. Mike?
I think cheaper devices. It all boils down back to cost. If you have the money to spare, you probably have a tablet at home and you have a phone as well. Both can serve the same purpose. Then you've added on a computer because you have the access to the funds to do this. So now being able to get same quality devices that could be made cheaper, accessible to more people. We've seen initiatives for where you can buy a device and pay it over time slowly. I think Safaricom have such a model, and we've seen some...
The Lipa Pole Pole.
Yes, okay. Lipa Pole Pole. We've seen other companies also come up with some payment methods with manufacturers where you get it and you pay it over time as you use. So that can help just increasing more penetration of these devices. But ideally, I think the devices need to start off by being built a lot cheaper. I think cost is a huge factor. Devices are getting better and better, but their cost is actually increasing. All the mobile phone manufacturers, all their new flagship phones, cost always goes up. But again, they argue obviously that the more features and more improvements on the devices, then you have to pay more for that. So I think either get a manufacturer who can build a device that's suited for that environment. You don't need every feature on every device, especially if you're going to take up these devices for educational purposes. If they're going to be used for training, they're going to be used in schools, then there are certain features that could be removed from the devices to make them cheaper. Maybe get manufacturers to do that, make the devices cheaper. I think we tried the tablets and laptops things for the schools. That didn't work out. Obviously, you first have to put in the power and the supporting infrastructure before you buy millions of laptops and tablets for schools. But still, I guess it was a worthy effort. I think just poor execution. But I think the goal is just to get the devices cheaper. Yeah.
Just to add something on the same.
All right, just a minute before you add it. I have a question for you, Ken. Now, how can we ensure that there is these digital devices are also accessible to those in the mashinani, so that they can also be able to access everything that we are doing? When you're talking about digital literacy, what needs to be done, Ken?
Great. When we talk of digital literacy and skills acquisition, that's an area that's quite passionate to me. Part of the work we're doing with deep learning for Africa to train the next 100,000 future data leaders. And when we talk of digital literacy, being able to impart this knowledge to our people in the marginalized areas means that, one, we need, as a government, to promote what we've been doing at deeplearning.ai and what we are now working currently with the Ministry of ICT and Ajira Digital is basically to promote public-private partnerships. And by that I mean they are educational tech companies and what we call edtech platforms that you can learn online, such as Coursera, Udacity, and the likes. Government and organizations can come together. 2020, ICT Authority partnered with Coursera. They were able to train 30,000 people in Kenya. We're doing a similar initiative this year to train more people on AI. So I believe, and we've had successes, and we've also seen even other countries being able to implement similar initiatives. And even in the country, we have the Google Digital for Africa partnering with the ministry. So if we can be able to create more synergy and more collaboration on public and private partnerships so that we can be able to train our people, so that they can be able to have access to this knowledge, it means that they'll be able to have access to the knowledge and they'll be able to use these digital platforms to their own benefit. So that's one great way that I've seen in my own ways the people we've been able to train. I'm also a beneficiary of Coursera, having learned in my early stages through Coursera.
But is that really accessible in the rural areas?
For it to be more accessible is, one, if you can be able to promote more of these partnerships and collaborations between public and private organizations. These edtech platforms are more than willing to be able to, because it's part of their mission. Like if it's data camp, part of the vision is to increase data literacy within Africa. So if our interests merge, we can be able to train our people. And we're also seeing similar initiatives. We have World Bank, I think, Digital Development Partnership Program. How can our government and our CBOs now come together and explore how can we be part of this program? If you look at the African Union right now, they have the African Union Broadband Commission on SDGs. How can we also be able to partner with them so that we can be able to get this access to this high quality training, the expert people, they'll be able to come and train our people. So that's one great way of seeing that we can be able to leverage to support our people in those marginalized areas to be able to access this knowledge. And while at that, just to add, as my fellow presenter mentioned, that we have access to low-cost devices. And while that happens, we are currently seeing an interesting conversation that would even help more of our people access internet. Why am I saying so? Right now, there's the rise of satellite-based internet. And one of the key concerns around the country is because the major competitor or that's against is because the internet fees it's quite high as compared to Starlink and satellite-based. So I'm of the thought that if, as much as we want to ensure our people have access to these devices, they've been trained, can we also have frameworks and ways that we can now be able to access more of, because we've seen now it's a cheap alternative. Because again, you mentioned that one challenge that's inhibiting our people to access internet is that as much as I have a phone, it's quite expensive for me to buy a data bundle. So if there's that alternative option that's cheaper, how can the government and other actors come on board and be able to collaborate on the same? So that's what I think that probably we could do. And I believe there are more other interventions that we can look at. How do we ensure that these people who are not part of the 60+ statistics, they're able to gain knowledge, know how to utilize these devices, how to even safely use these digital platforms for their own benefit.
Right. Yeah. Michael, I'd just like to understand more on what you mentioned, cheap. We should have cheaper option. How cheap is cheap for you?
Again, so that's,
Now, underline this, or just link this rather, with the rural, the marginalized communities. How cheap is cheap for them?
so I think that would depend on region to region. I think some areas closer, some of the rural areas closer to cities, cheap would be a lot, bit maybe expensive to those who are a lot farther away from urban areas. So I don't think there's an exact number we could have, because again, also you do also want variety within these devices. I think when we start saying that the devices obviously need to be cheap, we need to look at what's these households that we're sending these devices, what's their monthly income? Can they afford these devices? And that's why I think one good way is these payment platforms which allow you to pay off over time. So you sort of spread, you don't have a single upfront cost. And then I think that can be built on from there. It will be very difficult to stand up and say 2,000 shillings is the right amount. And there are people who would still not have access to that 2,000. They may want the devices for 500 shillings or 700 shillings. So because that's quite relative, we just need to find a way to ensure that there are enough options for these devices that should be affordable to every household. Yeah.
Now, I have a pressing concern, but I want you to hold on to this thought as we take this very short break.
Okay.
If we are making these devices accessible to the people in the marginalized communities, the rural areas, don't you think I'll be going to that particular place to get my phone from there, to buy my tablet from there? Think about that. Okay. We're taking a very short break. We're coming back after this break, of course.